Normally I would say to you, it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen, but today it's time for Ask Evelyn Kung. And you are the clinical director here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and working in this field for how long?
I have been doing this, always calculating, 27 years?
That's a long time.
So 26.
And
like
you are a wealth of knowledge, and at some point, it's not uncommon at some point during somebody's time as a card family that they will have an opportunity to get to talk to you and meet you, and you are always that warm, soothing, like you just can relax when you're talking to you, because you always have a sense of humor, but you're always about our kiddos and about helping them to learn and grow. And I think everybody always just goes, they're in good hands when they're with you. So, and important for people to know that you work on a wide variety of the cases here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and have seen many, many different things in your tenure here. So we're going to jump right in and ask some questions. Okay, our first question today. Our son has been banging with open hands 3 to 4 times on furniture on the floor recently. Have you heard of techniques to redirect this behavior because it's loud for the neighbors when he smacks down on the floor constantly?
Okay, so this is a tricky one, but actually kind of common. Okay, there's something with all behaviors from the behavior analyst's view is there's something that he's getting out of it that he's really intrinsically loving about it. And so that's probably the first place, we'd go is try to figure out like, why is he doing this? And, it could be he likes the sound. It could be that he likes the feeling on his hands. It could be he doesn't have anything else to do. Okay,
Yeah.
And frequently, actually, so many of the behaviors that the kids engage in are there because they don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, overall, he needs to be in some kind of ABA program, really learning how to do other things if we want this to stop. Okay, there has to be some kind of replacement behavior and some kind of replacement behavior that he enjoys.
Yeah.
And that he's finding meaningful in some way. So, overall, there's the behavior analysis of let's look at this behavior and treat it as a challenging behavior or a behavior that's maladaptive.
Okay.
But also there's multiple things that you can do. You can teach him other things to do so that he has more meaningful, fun things to do, and this just becomes a part of his repertoire. Or you can figure out like, why is he doing it? If he likes the sound of it, think about what other things that have sounds that you bang. And it can be, for kids, it can be drumming, it can be, any kind of musical instrument, whether it's like the xylophone or anything. It can be a keyboard. One of the things that actually a lot of the families have done with technology is they'll get a keyboard and plug it in the headphones so only the kid hears what he's banging on. And that's one. You can do that with drum sets, you can do that with musical instruments, you can do that with a variety of things now, that the kids just like the cause and effect of it.
Yes.
Where they can hear the sound, where they do something with their hand, they hear it. And in many ways, for a 2-year-old, it's totally typical, or a 3-year-old, because those are the toys.
Right.
They're cause and effect toys at that age.
Absolutely.
And there's a variety of things.
And when we think about it, I know people who play the bongos, adults who play the bongos because it relaxes them and they like the sound and they like the feel of it on their hands. And one of the things that I love about card, well, let me back up a little bit. There are a lot of people who have a lot to say about ABA that they don't like. That, well, if the child wants to do that, then we should let them. And, but I'm always thinking about, first of all, what is it preventing them from being able to do? And is there a way that we can morph whatever this behavior is and have it grow into something that is useful? And I didn't invent this idea. I got this from being a card parent. And one of my favorite stories that I like to tell, that we like to talk about here on the show, and we show the clip of Logan Shepherd.
Yep, he's amazing. And he had the same behavior. He loved flapping his hands. Yeah. Not banging, but he loved flapping his hands, and now he's an amazing drummer.
Professional drummer.
Yep.
And so when people say, well, when they force kids they police kids and they force them to stop doing the things that they enjoy, and I always think, okay, I'm sure that there's some maybe ABA provider somewhere that's looking at things that way.
Yeah.
And there are some behaviors that obviously if the child were taking a knife and slicing themselves and other people we don't want to look at that and go, now how can we make that more socially acceptable? We really want to stop that behavior, right?
Yes.
And find more meaningful things to do. But CARD looks at the behavior and says, why is the kid doing this? What purpose is it serving? Can we make this, function in a different way? Or, as you were saying, sometimes you give them something else to do that's more reinforcing that they can't do both things at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, all our kids like something for a specific reason. And if you can replicate it in a safe way, and if it doesn't overtake the functionality of their life so that it prevents them from doing, other types of things, let's use it.
Absolutely.
Let's use it.
I love the idea of plugging the keyboard in and letting him bang on the keyboard.
Oh yeah, I mean,
with the headphones.
Technology has improved so much where all our kids that love like the banging and the music and all of that, where we do plug them right in.
Yeah.
And for the kids that won't wear headphones, if they like the music enough, they learn to wear the headphones.
Yes.
They all do.
Isn't that funny? Because they want to be able to hear it. I'm even thinking they have those touch pads for there's Guitar Hero, and then there's
GarageBand in itself is just an amazing tool that if you want a cause and effect toy at a higher level.
Yeah.
So many of our kids have gotten into all the digital music because they can make all different sounds in all different ways and all different instruments.
Yes.
In any combination, and it's easy to use and they love it. And a lot of times just with the headphones, they can do it anywhere.
Yeah. And I've seen I know there's one that I have on the iPad that's like Shmuel, where you can set it to different settings. You can play a piano. And sometimes no matter what they touch, it'll play a tune.
Yes.
So they think they're playing the piano, but they could have touched anything and it'll play the tune. But it's a great way to get to something else instead of having the neighbors complain.
Oh, definitely. I mean, everybody goes nuts if there's too much noise all the time.
Yeah.
No matter how sweet the kid is.
And the last thing you need is to be, threatened to be evicted because
noise.
Yes. No, not so much
but
fun.
No, there's lots of opportunities. Kids that have that, that tendency, you can shape it into a lot of different really helpful things.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the next question. Hello, I have a 28-month-old son with ASD who has been in a full-time ABA since he was 22 months. He's a sweet and smart cookie when he's motivated to learn. Otherwise, he sings nursery rhymes all the time. And that's all in caps with 2 exclamation points. He's obsessed with the alphabets. This becomes a major problem when we want him to attend to a task at hand. He only has a couple of spontaneous mans at this point. He has a difficult time attending to people fully for any given time. How can we eliminate singing during task time? 2 question marks. Please help with 2 exclamation points.
I love this because I've had so many kids that have this exact description, same age and everything.
Okay.
So this is one of my favorite behaviors.
All right.
Because if you think about what this kid likes, that's going to be your key to everything.
Yeah.
He likes nursery rhymes and he sings them all the time over and over. It's the repetition a lot of times. It's the comfort of these words go together. This song, this book is always read in the same way. He probably likes to hear himself singing. That could be one of the things. Part of it can just be the repetition.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he loves letters and alphabet. And kids who love the alphabet are the best, easiest kids to reinforce and teach because words are everywhere.
Yeah.
And as he starts moving towards schooling, you're going to see the alphabet everywhere and numbers everywhere. And the first 2 years of schooling are just all based on the alphabet and learning words. And everything about that is going to be completely enticing to him.
Yes.
He's going to love it with all of his heart. And so how to work with it now, how to get him to attend to other things. You have an ABA program. All you have to do is make words a part of his reinforcement program. And it could be, I've had kids where we use the letters, the alphabet, as a token system. So when they do one trial of one, they get an A. They get a B for every trial that they correct until you get to the end of the alphabet, and that's it. I've had kids who, let's say with nursery rhymes, they can, a lot of times are hyperlexic, where they learned how to read something without ever being taught.
Yeah.
So I've had kids who like Elmo, goes to the city, and I'll have them earn every letter of the video or the nursery rhyme or the song. Like it had a Lion King where we made the LIO, the spelling of the word, a reinforcer where he had to earn, and we could get through a whole. Initially, it was just getting him through like 8 trials to get to the Lion King. So once it spelled Lion King, he could watch a part of it, and then we would move on or we'd sing a song. But at some point, we actually made the word Lion King last the whole session.
Wonderful.
He earned an L for like every half hour.
Yeah, so you're moving the goalpost further away.
And
Perfect.
he was totally excited, and he would stay quiet and not sing one of the songs until he got all his letters. And once he got his letters, he could sing it. But having alphabet as one of his preferences is going to be one of the best things that you can do, because you can teach him how to spell out any reinforcer that you want, whether it's cookies or a name of a song or a video or a person.
Okay.
Once they complete spelling the word, then they have access to that person or that video or that song for an X amount of time.
So take this passion and use it to your advantage. Make it his reward system whenever you can for whatever he's having difficulties with, and it'll be easier.
Yeah, and you can build it. He probably heard a lot of nursery rhymes early on, so that's what he's singing. But when you start reading books to him, like the same books over, he'll start probably memorizing all the words in the book.
Right.
But you can keep increasing the bar so that his repertoire is not just these 5 songs. It can be 100 songs.
Right.
It can be 100 books. It can be anything.
It's hard in the beginning because I think as parents, we're so much more, we're not patient. We're impatient. And so in the beginning when they're starting, because they want to get focus, I would imagine that they need to give the reinforcer the letters fairly quickly in to gain focus and then move. So if you want them to focus for 5 seconds, give them the letter, then 6 seconds, give them the letter, then 7 seconds, give them the letter.
Yeah, and initially you might earn all the words to your nursery rhyme in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Or 1 minute. And then next time you're just going to make him do 2 trials for each letter. Versus 3 trials for each letter but initially it's 1 trial per letter so that he starts to understand, if I do this trial without singing and just answer this person, then I'm going to get one of these letters, and he's going to work for that letter, especially if you make it very visual in front of him.
Okay.
So you're writing it out on a whiteboard or putting out letters with using, the puzzle pieces that have all the letters, or if you just get a puzzle board with the A through Z and he just earns 1 piece for each, slot that he sticks. There's a lot of different ways. When you have kids who love letters and numbers, eventually you can write out anything that you want. If you want him to go on an outing somewhere, you can write anything out, and the kids totally get it, and they know all the rules for it if you teach it correctly.
Wonderful. Okay.
It's a good motivator.
Fabulous. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we just had a question come in on Facebook from the mom who was on Dr. Phil with her son, with Dr. Grant Boucher. And so she has a question for you. Okay. So stick with us. We're going to be right back with more Autism Live after these messages.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. This month we're going to be creating a popsicle puzzle. As we do this fun activity, you'll notice these icons will pop up. These icons tell you important information about the skills we're using to create the craft and where you can find them on the Skills program. Skills is an ABA-based tool that helps parents create a curriculum that will help their children that are on the autism spectrum. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are popsicle sticks, tape, and arts and crafts materials. So step 1, you're going to take your popsicle sticks and lay them down and cover them with tape so they don't move around. Now that my popsicle sticks have been secured with tape, here comes the fun part. You're going to take your arts and crafts materials, they can be paint, markers, whatever you have, and then you're going to decorate this with a beautiful picture. This is the beautiful picture that I made. Now what I'm going to do is remove the tape. And now, as you can see, they come apart. And here is your awesome puzzle. Now, the fun part is trying to assemble the picture that you just made now that it's all been separated. I hope you enjoyed this activity with me. Until next time, guys, craft on! To find more about Skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parents icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with Evelyn Kung, who is the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and she's answering your questions in real time. Before we went to break, I mentioned that on Facebook, Cindy Burns had written in and said, "Hi Evelyn, I took my family on Dr. Phil in 2008 and started a biomedical journey thanks to Dr. Dorian Granpeesheh. My son has been an ABA for years and is dual diagnosed with Down syndrome and autism. What can I do when my son randomly hits us or others? Currently, I do not respond and try to redirect, but he keeps slapping."
Well, from my understanding, first, congratulations. I mean, it's great that you've been doing all the biomedical work, and to have him in an ABA program when he has a dual diagnosis is amazing.
Yeah.
We actually have quite a few children here
Yeah.
with dual diagnosis, and I have to say the Downs kids they're so lovely. They're so happy, and they're just so much fun to work with. Their
Yeah.
personalities are great. But in terms of the slapping, this is really something that your BCBA really shouldn't be doing with you. There are, from a behavior analysis viewpoint, first you have to do a functional assessment, behavior assessment. You have to see, like, why is this kid doing this? And it's a random slap, but we have to figure out what those random slaps are, because usually it's for some component. Like, slapping can be just like, the kids have learned that if you are doing something that they don't want you to be doing, such as talking to a friend or someone else, and they're not following, they're going to slap to get your attention. And, that would be an intention maintained. One could be, there's so many different ways. And since you're saying it's randomly, this is something really that you should be recording baseline so that you can see, like, when is this happening? I was doing X when this person or this, your husband or another sibling or family friend was doing something when this child slapped. So you can figure out, like, why. Is he doing it to escape because he doesn't want or avoid the situation he's in because he wants to leave?
Yeah.
Or is he doing it because he wants your attention and he doesn't like that you're attending to someone else? Since it's random, it probably isn't what we would consider automatic, where he's slapping just for fun, because he's intrinsically getting something he likes out of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different reasons that could be happening, but I would tell your supervisor to be taking a baseline, to do a functional behavior assessment, and just see, like, when is this happening? Yeah. And once you can figure out when and why it's happening, then you can talk about replacement behaviors.
And I just want to say, and thank you for all that, for people who are watching who may be having the same issue at home, this really is the best course of action for anybody, that if you have a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, to do that functional behavior assessment. Because think of it this way, if your car starts making a clunking noise, right? We can say to ourselves, oh, I think it's this or I think it's that, but we never trust what we think, especially if it's preventing the car from going or there's a potential for somebody to be hurt. You say to yourself, I don't want to trust my opinion on this. You don't just pull the brakes out, right? You drive over to the mechanic and say, I'm going to let the mechanic who has studied this diagnose for me what's going on first, and then fix it, right?
Yeah, and to come up with a treatment plan.
Right.
Like, figure it out. And a lot of times people might say, like, they'll try an intervention here and there. And that actually is worse because it teaches the kid that they need to do this for a longer period of time to get your attention, or for a longer period of time to escape. And then we're just building the child's tolerance, or intolerance to the situation.
Right. There's the potential to make it worse. And
yes.
I think that's the thing that we want to get to, is that especially when it's something where somebody's being hit, we really shouldn't mess around with that. There are times when we'll talk about a behavior and go, well, we don't really know what the function of the behavior is, and it might be this or it might be that. And for each function of the behavior, there's a vastly different intervention.
Yeah.
And for some things, you can try to figure it out yourself. For some things, we recommend that you go on skills and do the CFA, which is like doing a functional behavior assessment, but you answering questions.
Yeah.
It's a portion of it.
Definitely.
And but when somebody has the potential to be hurt, really the best course of action is to go to a BCBA. And if you already have one on your case, how lucky are you? That's
yes.
a really great thing. And you can go to them and say, we need to have an FBA on this. We need to know. By the way, if it's happening at school, you can ask school to do an FBA to see what the function of the behavior is, so that you get the right treatment intervention right out the gate.
And you have to know that just because the behavior is the same, it could have a different function for every time. So sometimes the child can be doing it for attention, sometimes they can be doing it for escape. And I think that that's when it's multiply controlled that way. Those are the hardest ones to try to figure out, because you can't treat all slapping the same way then. You have to look and say, oh, are you doing this for my attention? Here's a better way to get my attention. Oh, you're doing this because you want to leave? Here, let's give you something to do so that we have to stay in until we can leave this environment. Like, there's a lot of different reasons kids engage in behaviors, although the behavior itself might look the same. So that's why you want the BCBA to really be able to look at it across settings to see, like, it might be a different intervention depending on where you're at, what you're doing, the situation you're in.
Okay. We had a follow-up question about the banging.
Okay.
Mom has written in and said that you mentioned for 2 to 3 year olds to give them toys to bang, but does that apply with older kids? Because this is an older kid.
So okay, for the older kids, I go to musical instruments.
Yeah.
Because that's completely age appropriate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back and give them an Elmo little slap thing, because it just isn't right to have like a 10-year-old, play with a 2-year-old toy. So, some like it, but I'm not going to go teach something like that.
Yeah.
If I'm going to teach something, I want to teach something that this person's going to be able to use with somebody his own age.
Right.
And musical instruments like, the bongos or, the drum pads or anything like that are completely age appropriate from actually any age on.
Yeah. I just am reminded of the fact that a really good friend of mine who, what a great parent, I steal a lot of things from her all the time, and her son is in graduate school now, but when he was a teenager, and they were going through a contentious divorce and having some issues and stuff, she gave her young teenage son a set of bongos and cleaned out a spot in his closet and said, this is your safe place. You can go in there and play your bongos and scream and yell and do whatever, when you're feeling upset, because this is your place that you can go and do that. And it gave him an outlet, and this was a neurotypical kid, right? And that needed a place and to bang on the drum and to get that out.
Yeah.
And he, is a fabulous young man in graduate school who still likes to do drum circles and finds it really fun and a great physical release, but, doesn't need that.
Yeah, if you are near a drum circle, it's a great thing to take your child to. They're just, their eyes just open up and they see all these people banging on things and they're all doing it together and they're all looking at each other. It's amazing. It's so much fun.
I especially love, here in LA, there's a group that bangs on those tubs, the plastic tubs. It's almost like Stomp, and I have some great video of them teaching Jem how to drum on it and him doing a duel with somebody. And he was so focused and invested. And this was, I think, before he fully had come back to being verbal. But the intensity that the one guy would just, do a rat-a-tat-tat. And then he'd pause for Jem, and Jem would do the exact same noise. Oh,
wow.
Good times.
Yeah, so much fun.
All right, want to move on to a question here. They wrote in and said, my kid has made so much progress. I'm now questioning if she still meets diagnostic criteria for autism. When, if ever, is a good time to seek confirmation of optimal outcome?
Oh, so fun. So I've been fortunate enough here at CARD to have lots of kids come in and lose their diagnosis.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best things in the world. And for me, actually, one of the things that's most gratifying is to, a lot of my kids that I first started working were in their mid-20s, almost 30 now. And to see them just living their life on their own is incredible. And they're doing things way crazier than I would ever even think of because they're so smart.
Right.
They're incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
And the things they're designing, is just incredible. But, I always say, you want this child to go get standardized testing done. Go get a language test, go get an IQ test, get social problem solving, get executive functioning. Go and get standardized testing done by a psychologist and look at the results and see what is still not in the norm. And if nothing is in the norm, great. If you want to get their diagnosis removed, go and do it. Go get evaluated, and they'll probably do some diagnostic testing and go through the process, and it can be removed. There are some logistics where some schools want to leave it in the record, and if you want to hide it, then you might need to get some legal help. And there has been discussion about not being able to hide anything in a record too. So that's a discussion to be had. But, those are all possibilities. However, I wouldn't want to stop therapy without the testing.
Right.
Okay? Because the child might be almost look typical at that moment. But if the testing doesn't show that they're in that average range, that means there's more to be learned.
Right.
A lot of our kids, especially the younger ones that have had intensive intervention, gain those initial skills really quickly because it involves rote memory. It becomes much harder later on in the ages as, situations can't be memorized. You don't react the same way. There's just not, the decision making isn't, if you say this, I do this. When you get into social situations, it's like, okay, I heard your words, see your face, and I know what that means. I know where we're at. And then all of those things have to come together to make me decide how to respond to you.
Yeah.
And a lot of times being able to take all that information in at one time and make a judgment about what's the most important part to attend to, but not forgetting about all the other components in a social setting and responding it the right way is very difficult. So I'm always hesitant. I don't want families to take their child out of therapy too quickly. Right. Because if they do, I have had families who have seen this and decided we don't need, you anymore. And then 5 years later as a teenager try to come back, or 10 years later. Yeah. And as a teenager, they don't want the help. And a lot of times they don't have time to get the help, and they're not as flexible in learning at that point. So I always tell people, go, if you think your child's, almost done or graduated, go get testing done. Let's look at everything. And if everything says, they're in that average range and good, then hey, this is a good time to end. But if anything is still like low, there's times when we do let kids go when they haven't hit that norm. Right. But a lot of times it's things in areas where we know that they have the skills to catch up, so that they know how to ask the right questions when they don't know something. Right. ABA isn't meant to teach a child everything they know. It's meant to give them the tools for how to learn. Yes. And so when kids are leaving the program, if I know that they're really good at asking questions, that's actually very comforting to me, because I know that if they're not afraid to ask, they'll be able to see something and not be able to understand what's happening, but be able to turn to someone and say, like, so what happened there, or what was going on, and be able to ask those questions so that they can get the information that they need. And so, it's been fun for me, because I'm been very blessed to be able to have a lot of kids out there just running around who I used to carry in my arms. Right. But I also, there are a handful of kids where they've left and tried to come back later on, and it's just so much harder to work with them as teenagers.
Well, and somebody has written in and said, they need some clarification. They said, why would someone lose their diagnosis? I thought the diagnosis was a lifelong diagnosis. And I have to preface this with, this is a very controversial. Very controversial. And I think there are lots of people who have lots of different opinions. Mm-hmm. And here on the show, we try to be really respectful of everybody's opinions on it. Yes. But there is a diagnosis. Right now, it's the autism spectrum disorder. Mm-hmm. And I, for myself, I just want to say that I see that people who have autism, and my son was diagnosed with autism, so I've spent a great deal of time talking to him, that their brains look at things in a different way than my brain and maybe your brain look at things. But there was a time, and I see this in a lot of people, there is a disability that comes sometime with that. But I have seen people in my experience that get to a point where I can see clearly that they still think differently and operate differently, but there is no more disability. Yes. There's a different ability, but it isn't a disability.
Yeah, and I think it's a very controversial subject for so many, because I think anytime you're commenting on, who a person is, I think it's very controversial. And if somebody sees this diagnosis as core of who it is going to be offensive. Yeah. But more than anything, I agree. It's like, if what we want these people to be is who they are. Yes. But we want them to be fully functioning independent adults where they can make their own decisions and be able to contribute to society. And if they can't function to their ultimate ability, then there is that disability there. And that is, and you work with what you have. So I have some kids who are happy to say like, yeah, I had a diagnosis of autism, I don't fit it now. There's no specific test for these diagnoses. If I look at the last 3 diagnostic statistics manuals, the DSMs, the name of autism has changed so much. Right now it's autism spectrum disorder. The one DSM-4 was either autistic disorder, pervasive developmental disorder, or Asperger's disorder, all under pervasive developmental disorders. And then the one before that, it was childhood schizophrenia.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just the change. There is no, at some point, I hope we can do some kind of biomedical test and figure it out. But right now, it's symptomatic. We're looking at symptoms and seeing like what criteria you're meeting within symptomology do I observe in you. Yeah. A lot of times our kids who do lose the diagnosis, their personality is to who they are. They might still be a little bit more focused on whatever it is they're doing than the typical population, but they're fully functioning and they're within that norm. I think that so many of my professors could have fallen into the spectrum when I was in college if I knew about it.
Because there's so many different criteria. We all fit in there somewhere, but we don't qualify for a diagnosis of a disorder.
Yes, and it's not a disability. You're able to use that, interest in a way to contribute to society, and to be meaningful to yourself and to find it very gratifying.
And so what we're talking about are individuals often that, as a child they were diagnosed and there was a clear disorder, and there was a clear path of here are the criteria that make this child eligible for a diagnosis of an autism spectrum disorder. But then if one of the things on there is that you have rigidity and you follow a certain path, and if you can't follow that path you become hysterical, right? And if over time they're able to work with that individual so that they're very flexible, then they get over here, and they're worked on 5 other things too. They no longer, if somebody new looks at them and says this person doesn't qualify for a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, and that's honestly, and there are different criteria that people look at. One of the ways that CARD says is that if a person does not need support and their life is functioning, for a student that means that you're maintaining above a C average, and that you're able to do the things that you need to do, be able to work, have friends, and do all those things, and you don't meet that criteria, then you've lost your diagnosis.
Yeah, and a lot of times, people really focus on it. What I love, like hanging out with some of my older 20-something-year-olds, they're not actually interested in talking about autism anymore. They're just like, yeah, that was a part of my life, but they're on to other things that they want to do in life. And it's completely appropriate to who they are as 20-something-year-olds.
And that's a wonderful thing. It creates the problem that a lot of people will write in and say, if this is a possibility, where are all these people? And my answer is, well, they're living their lives.
They don't want to be talking about this anymore.
And sometimes they're willing to open up about it, but they all say the same thing. Then everybody looks at me differently. That moms will come up to them and be like, so where is the autism? I want to see it. And I know I've been guilty of that. Of when I meet somebody who wasn't verbal as a child, and now they're working at a job that I go, oh my gosh. I want to meet them and I drool all over them, and they don't like that, because who would like that?
Yeah, nobody wants to be looked at through a microscope.
No.
And I actually, fortunately, a couple months ago, I hung out with one of my kids without his parents for the first time. With ever a parent.
This is an adult now.
It's an adult now. He's a grad student and doing amazing things, and it was the first time that I actually hung out with him without no parents being there.
Yeah.
And then I actually had my family with me too.
Right.
So then it was just so fun because it was just so normal. But he was so typical in so many ways, because whenever I said anything about his mom, I'd say, oh yeah, your mom used to say, he would I could tell he could turn around and roll his eyes. If I said it. But that's so typical. And even my husband was joking and saying, did you notice every time you said anything about his mom, he just went silent. He wouldn't say anything.
Well, let's face it, we tend to be problem moms, because we're
hyper focused.
Well, we had to be.
Yeah.
We had had to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had several more questions here. I just am picking which one. So Carrie writes in and says, my son is 4 years old and hates to be outdoors. Even on holiday, he just wanted to stay in the caravan. He also refuses to walk outside too, so we had a pram if we do go anywhere. We have lots of people watching in England. You can tell that.
I can tell by the English.
And there was another one that was from the UK as well. Getting him to school is hard, or just going shopping. How can I help him enjoy being outside? I've tried headphones, but he refuses to wear these right now.
This is another thing. If you have a BCBA around, they need to do an assessment of the situation, because it could, you already tried the noise thing, the headphones maybe, but a lot of our kids, it might be the bright lights, because a lot of the kids on the ASD spectrum have sensory issues. And it could be the bright light where it's just like so bright and they just don't know how to tell you that when they're out and about, it bothers them. And we have kids who wouldn't go outside, and suddenly we gave them sunglasses. And at the beginning, we had to teach them how to wear the sunglasses because they didn't want them on their head.
Right.
But once they got used to it, it made going out for walks in the park and everywhere possible, because it was the light. Some kids, it's the feel of the sun.
Right.
Or just like some kids, it's the people, all the people around them, and it's just like becomes very probably claustrophobic to them to some degree, because they need space. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. My guess for this one would be that it's a sensory aspect, and that there's something about being outside that that they don't like.
I love Dr. Stephen Shore, who's been on the show before. He's the person who's credited with saying, when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And he teaches, he's on the autism spectrum, and he teaches at Delphi, teaches music as a college professor at Delphi University. So, but you will see him wherever he goes, he wears a baseball hat, because he can't stand for light to come from above. And I've heard other people talk about how when they're outside without a hat, it feels like they're going to fall into the sky. That's what it feels like. And if you can imagine how disconcerting that would feel. But Stephen goes everywhere with a baseball hat. And when he was hired to teach college, he said to them, I just need to know dress code. Are you going to be okay with, I need to be able to teach in a baseball hat? And they were like, what? And he said, that's the accommodation that I need. And they went, well, yeah, then of course you can do that. So it would be interesting to try to see if a hat and sunglasses makes it any different, but they're going to have to work on being able to wear the hat and the sunglasses.
Yes, first.
Because don't just assume, oh, I can slap a hat on, sunglasses, and we're good to go.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see if that makes a difference.
Yeah, because you don't know what, if you can get the kids vocal enough to tell you what they don't like, that makes it easier. But in the moment, whenever anybody, whether neurotypical or not, the difference I've noticed on the sensory end of things for the kids that are ASD and the neurotypical is that the neurotypical kids or people, individuals, can use their language to modulate all the sensory aspects. So if somebody smells something that's getting them nauseous, they're able to just tell somebody, can we close the window? The smell outside is making me feel sick right now.
Absolutely.
And so that's the difference. It's getting the communication in terms of language. And if you have the communication ability, there's a lot of typical people out there who have sensory issues, but they know how to modulate it because they just use their language.
There we go.
Our kids don't have that a lot of times. And maybe they talk, but they don't know how to speak in those ways that can, change the behavior of the people around them or the environment so that they're able to accept it better or just accommodate the need that they have. And that is the hugest difference.
Well, this has been so great, and unfortunately we're out of time. They're about to get the hook and drag me out because we got to go on to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, but I really want to thank you for taking the time. We always love it when you have an opportunity to fill in for Dr. Grant Pichet. It's been such a delight.